Welcome. You're listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War podcast, the show that cuts through the fog of war and updates you about the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts.
Hello, I'm Marina Yevshan, your host of the Russia-Ukraine War Report podcast, and today is June the 3rd, 2024. It has been 3,780 days since Russia started covert military operations in Crimea, 10 years and 104 days since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, and 2 years and 101 days since Russia expanded its war of aggression. Today's podcast looks at events that happened over the weekend. You're probably wondering why the last podcast was on May the 9th. Our Chief Content Officer David is the head writer. He had to leave for a family emergency in California on May the 12th, and on May the 22nd, his mother passed away quietly with her family nearby. David is now back in the office. During the podcast, you will find the Russia-Ukraine war map helpful to visualize the areas discussed. A link is in the podcast description. There are only minor map updates today. The Russia-Ukraine war report is compiled by our team from around the world. Today's report includes information from our direct contacts and journalists in Ukraine, the Russian Ministry of Defense, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine morning reports, operational commands north, south and east of Ukraine, open source intelligence, our in-house team of analysts and geospatial experts, and pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian mail bloggers and social media channels with a track record of trying to be accurate. We have one mission, the truth, because the truth matters. Here is my daily assessment. 1. In our assessment, Russia's ongoing spring-summer offensive, now in its 44th day, has failed to achieve any of its operational goals. 2. The sharp increase in aggressive acts by the Russian Federation directed at the NATO alliance and its member nations is a direct result of the failed policy of de-escalation and excessive fear of Moscow's tactical nuclear threats. We maintain the world is caught in the mutually assured destruction instability paradox, and the threat has increased during May. We further assess that Russia is actively setting conditions for further aggression in other parts of Europe. 3. In our assessment, Moscow miscalculated the political fallout from the May 25th attack on the Kharkiv hypermart. Since the attack, more than 16 nations, including the United States and Germany, have granted at least conditional permission to Ukraine to strike Russian targets located within the 1991 borders. 4. We maintain that autocrat Vladimir Putin's offer to negotiate a ceasefire based on the current line of conflict is not an overture made in good faith. It is meant to derail the upcoming June 15th–16th peace conference in Switzerland, which more than 100 nations will attend, and to amplify the false narrative that Ukraine is the aggressor. 5. Russia's sustained attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, which has destroyed 95% of its thermal power plant capacity, are a continuation of Russian crimes against humanity that started in October 2022, as outlined in 2 arrest warrants issued by International Criminal Court on March 5th. 6. Ukrainian personnel shortages are extending deployment times, limiting troop rotations, and forcing combat ineffective units to maintain defensive positions, which is contributing to Russia's ability to make small tactical advances in some areas of operation. 7. Russian forces continue to exploit the delays in significant military aid from the US, the Czech Republic-led ammunition initiative, and the European Union, carrying out at least 263 attacks from Friday to Sunday evening. 8. In our assessment, the quantity of artillery ammunition available to Ukrainian forces is increasing, but has not reached a level that will enable the stabilization of their defensive lines across the entire line of conflict. We further assess this situation will continue to improve through June. 9. Russia's trampling of international humanitarian law has been accelerating since March 22nd. We maintain that the willful ignoring of blatant Russian war crimes by international watchdogs will continue to encourage escalation. 10. Autocrat Putin has started the largest purge of the Russian Ministry of Defense, led by the FSB, since Joseph Stalin's 1936 to 1938 purge. In 1999, Putin shaped the FSB into his own image, and he fundamentally has absolute control of the security organizations and seeks to nullify any potential political enemies within the mod. 11. We maintain the possibility of a large-scale Russian attack into the Sumy Oblast from Russia or the Kyiv Oblast from Belarus is extremely low. 12. The attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure have incrementally increased the chance of an intentional nuclear accident at multiple nuclear facilities in Ukraine. The Rivne nuclear power plant has issues with stable external power, and the overall situation is more serious, especially the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, than what the International Atomic Energy Agency is reporting. Over the weekend, Russia carried out its largest missile and drone attack since May the 8th. On the night of May the 31st and June the 1st, Russia launched 35 Kh-101 and 555 missiles from 6 Tu-95 strategic bombers, 10 caliber cruise missiles from 2 Kilo-class submarines and 1 corvette from the eastern part of the Black Sea, 4 Iskander-M short-range ballistic missiles and 1 Iskander-K cruise missile from occupied Crimea, and 3 Kh-59 or 69 air-to-surface guided missiles launched by tactical aviation. Russia also launched 47 Shahed-136 one-way drones. All the missiles and drones targeted civilians and civilian infrastructure. Air defenses shot down 46 Shahed UAVs, 30 Kh-101 and 555 missiles, 4 caliber cruise missiles, and the Iskander-K cruise missile. Ukrainian air defenses were 81% effective, a significant improvement from 6 weeks ago. Russia used 2 smaller attacks earlier in the week to test Ukrainian air defenses to find gaps they could exploit. Many missiles approached the NATO alliance borders of Hungary, Slovakia and Poland, with the Polish Air Force scrambling F-16s supported by a US Air Force KC-135 straighter tanker. Operational Command of Poland called it a, quote, long and tense night for the entire air defense system. There were no reports of airspace violations. Missiles struck the dam structure at the Dnipro hydroelectric station in Zaporizhzhia, placing the facility in, quote, critical condition and closing the road that crosses the dam. The international targeting of works and installations containing dangerous forces is a violation of Article 56 of the Geneva Conventions and is a war crime. Critical electrical infrastructure was also hit in the Ivano-Frankivsk Oblast, requiring over 100 firefighters to bring the situation under control. In the Lviv region, 3 critical energy infrastructure facilities were hit, wounding 4 people. The Bilchevolitsko-Herska gas compressor and storage facility near Stryy was one of the areas targeted. Also, on June the 1st, the VKS, that's the Russian Aerospace Forces, bombed Mirnograd in the Donetsk Oblast using OMPK glide bombs. 5 civilians were injured. The settlement of Kostiantynivka was also bombed, wounding a 48-year-old woman who is in hospital in serious condition. In the Kherson Oblast, a woman from Velika Alexandrivka was hospitalized after a Russian attack. On the night of June the 1st and the 2nd, Russia launched 25 Shahed-136 one-way drones at Ukraine, with 24 intercepted. A Russian Kh-59 guided missile was also shot down over the Dnipropetrovsk region. Debris from a Shahed struck an industrial warehouse in the Kutsurub Hromada of the Mykolaiv Oblast. There were no injuries, but the building was a total loss. During the day on Sunday, a Russian missile strike, likely an Iskander-K cruise missile, damaged the port infrastructure in Odessa. The VKS bombed the village of Andriivka in the Kharkiv Oblast, wounding a 76-year-old man and an 85-year-old woman. The attack also destroyed their home. Over the weekend, a Russian attack on the Donetsk Oblast village of Ptyche killed one civilian and destroyed 3 homes, and in Ukrainsk, Russian shelling wounded 1. The VKS bombed Drobyshevo, killing 2 and wounding 3. In the Kherson Oblast, the cities of Bereslav and Kherson and 22 villages and settlements were attacked by artillery, rockets and drones and bombed by the VKS. Despite the widespread attacks, only 1 civilian was wounded. On Friday night, Russian artillery strikes on the Nikopol rayon in the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast wounded 4, including a 7-year-old girl. The death toll from the May 30th Russian double-tap S-300 anti-aircraft missile attack on the city of Kharkiv grew to 9, with 2 more people missing in the rubble. The number of wounded stands at 25. Russian attacks and the occupation of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant have disabled or destroyed 70% of Ukraine's electrical generation capacity. Officials were expecting rolling blackouts today due to the damage. During May, Russia launched 349 Shahed-136 one-way drones at Ukraine, with 339 shot down. The 97% intercept rate is the best performance since the first Shaheds were used in September 2022. After a year of data, we maintain that Russia and Iran combined can produce 375 to 400 Shahed-136 drones a month. Here is today's action report. Russia's spring-summer offensive is in its 44th day, and Moscow has been handed its first strategic defeat. Autocrat Putin declared that the operational goal for attacking northern Kharkiv was to create a buffer zone along the Kursk and Belgorod borders to end Ukrainian cross-border attacks. We repeatedly questioned the validity of Russian claims that Ukraine was using artillery and Grad rockets to strike the city of Belgorod. We believe many of the strikes were carried out by Russia as a casus belli. Not only has the Russian advance been stopped with Russian units switching to active defense, but Ukraine has been permitted to strike Russia within its 1991 borders using Allied-provided weapons. Just hours after Ukraine received approval from the United States, a Russian ammunition depot in Shebekino was destroyed. Over the weekend, multiple Russian military targets, troop formations and armored columns were targeted by rockets fired by HIMARS. Russian military leaders failed to meet Putin's objective of creating a buffer and bringing Russian troops within artillery range of the city of Kharkiv. Instead, the Allied outrage over the May 25th bombing of epicenter in the city of Kharkiv resulted in wider and deeper attacks by Ukraine in the Belgorod and Kursk regions. Looking at the rest of the battlefield, while the situation across the theater of war cannot be described as stable, a growing number of Ukrainian units are reporting that it is improving as more artillery rounds and rockets for HIMARS reach the front. Complaints from Russian units strongly suggest that Ukraine has achieved its goal of producing at least 86,000 one-way drones a month, and possibly more. There are widespread reports of a sharp increase in Ukrainian drone strikes and Russian electronic warfare systems losing effectiveness. In the short term, the situation for Ukraine remains critical, and the issues of ammunition shortages, Russian air superiority, glide bomb strikes, personnel shortages and training issues are still major problems. In the medium term, Russia's systemic problems are growing. One example of this is the increasingly drastic steps Russia is taking to provide mobility to its troops. Analysis of satellite images of Russian storage depots shows that their equipment reserves continue to shrink. We reported last week that bridging equipment appears to be completely exhausted. New analysis suggests that the reserve of BM-21 Grad rocket launchers is below 50%, and that Taut artillery pieces have been mostly cannibalized for their barrels. Russian state media agency Izvestia released a video showing how Russian units have started to make improvised armored personnel carriers by removing the turrets from the tanks and welding a shell over the hull. Russian forces have an increasing number of tanks with worn-out barrels with no available replacements, and these hulls are likely being used to create the makeshift APCs. The total tanks were effective in March and April when Ukrainian forces were facing critical shortages of artillery ammunition. That's no longer the case, and they are being destroyed in increasing numbers, causing significant Russian casualties. Russian troops have also added anti-drone cages to motorcycles. In our assessment, instead of taking a drone to the face, Russian troops can now be sprayed with shrapnel when the drone explodes on the cage. We're not sure how that's an improvement. Russian propagandist Alexander Sladkov released a video showing Russian assault units preparing Chinese Desert Cross APCs with protective anti-drone slat armor. As with the motorbikes, in our assessment, this will result in occupants being sprayed with shrapnel instead of taking a drone to the face while reducing speed and maneuverability. We link to all the pictures and videos showing the improvised armor being built in the field by Russian troops in our daily situation report. There is a link in the podcast description, and we offer a 7-day free trial. While Russia has not reached a tipping point for its equipment reserve, Moscow is reaching the point where time will no longer be on its side. We updated the table for Russian versus Ukrainian equipment losses using information from the Oryx database through May 30, 2024, which includes the losses suffered during the Prigozhin insurrection of June 23–24, 2023. There's too much information to go through in the podcast, with more information in our sitrap. Through May 31st, the Russian officers killed in Ukraine project has documented 4,184 military officers killed since February 24, 2022, maintaining the pace of slightly more than 5 a day. The figure does not include senior leaders of private military companies, Chechen forces, or members of the 1st and 2nd Army Corps of the so-called Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic. The database tracks deaths confirmed by the Russian Ministry of Defense, obituaries, news reports, documented funerals, and memorials. The actual number is likely significantly higher. Now, let's talk about what happened on the battlefield. There have only been small changes since the last podcast. Ready? Here we go.
You're listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War Podcast. Our team of journalists, researchers, and analysts is funded by readers, listeners, and viewers just like you. To support independent journalism, please consider becoming a patron. You can find us on patreon.com/malcontentnews.
Starting in the Kharkiv Oblast, we begin in the Liptsev-Ovchansk area of operation, or AO. Russian forces have switched to active defense as Ukrainian forces made marginal gains in Vovchansk, advancing west of Soborna Street in the direction of the hospital. Russian sources are reporting that Ukraine has launched a significant counterattack. The change is not due to fresh Ukrainian reserves. The Ukrainian defensive lines have been stabilized, and the amount of ammunition for barrel and tubed artillery has increased. A Russian soldier claimed that after the first night in Vovchansk, only 12 members of his company of 100 remained. One-way drones repeatedly attacked Russian forces occupying their garages on the northern edge of the settlement. Another video showed an 8-man Russian squad had been eliminated southwest of the garages. Russian forces launched a significant armored assault in the direction of Staritsa that ended in catastrophe. Video showed that 20 Russian troops were killed and over 30 wounded. 4 T-62 medium-duty tanks were destroyed or damaged, along with a BMP-1 and a 2 S-1 Gvozdika self-propelled howitzer. A Ukrainian rocket attack destroyed a group of warehouses in Shebekino, Belgorod, Russia. The warehouses had military supplies and ammunition, including S-300 anti-aircraft missiles. Russian videos and photos claiming that the site was a market for civilians showed unexploded ordnance, including an S-300 warhead, in the debris. We link to the picture in the situation report. The commander of Chechen Akhmat, Abti Alaudinov, claimed that additional Chechen units were being transferred to the Belgorod region to, quote, work in the border areas of the Kharkiv region. Russian forces documented themselves committing war crimes. In one video, a Russian drone operator attacked a civilian evacuation vehicle, killing 2 police officers and wounding 2 civilian evacuees. In the second, far more disturbing video, Russian troops beat 3 Ukrainian prisoners of war, appearing to knock one unconscious. They then carry out a mock execution, firing a live round just centimeters from his head. Dmytro Lubinets, the Human Rights Commissioner of the Ukrainian Parliament, wrote that he, quote, sent official letters to the International Committee of the Red Cross and the United Nations so that they document the facts of the abuse. This will become another addition to the evidence base for the future tribunal against the criminals. Unquote. In the Svatovo AO of Kharkiv and Luhansk oblasts, positional fighting continued near Novovodane in the direction of Druzhelyubivka, with no change in the situation. In the Kremenna AO, Russian forces used sabotage and reconnaissance units to probe Ukrainian defenses east of Nevske and attempted to advance in the direction of Terny. Fighting also continued in the Serebryanka forest, where Ukrainian forces have stabilized their defensive lines. In the Siversk AO of the Luhansk Oblast, Russian forces continued their significant attacks northeast, east and southeast of Bilogorivka, and lost several armored vehicles, including T-62 and T-64BV medium-duty tanks, and at least one improvised armored personnel carrier, also known as a total tank. Let's talk about the Donbass and the northeastern part of the Donetsk Oblast. In the Siversk and Soledar AOs, Russian forces made renewed attacks southeast of Vyimka and south of Rozdolivka. Ukrainian commanders said the situation was, quote, tense. In the Kostiantynivka AO, Russian forces continued their intense attacks in the direction of Chasiv Yar. Assaults on the eastern edge of Kalinivka, the canal district of Chasiv Yar, and the Novy micro-district were repulsed. A single Russian MTLB broke through Ukrainian defenses near Kalinivka and reached the Siversky Donetsk-Donbass canal before being destroyed. There is no evidence to support this as a part of a larger attack or a successful advance. Ukrainian forces hit Russian positions in Ivanivske with one-way drones, confirming our existing line of conflict. Further south, fighting continued within the no-man's land of Klishchiivka and southeast of Andriivka. On the southwestern part of the Donetsk Oblast, Ukrainian troops continue to hold their defensive lines in the northern part of the Avdiivka AO. Russian forces carried out 17 attacks, attempting to advance into Novoalexandrivka and in the direction of Sokil without success. South of occupied Berdychi, there was only positional fighting. While Ukrainian forces still do not have enough artillery shells and rockets, there is enough material to restart interdiction on Russian supply lines, complicating their offensive operations. There continues to be significant fog of war in the Vuhledar AO. The situation in Krasnohorivka is unclear due to conflicting reports from Russian and Ukrainian sources. Ukrainian source Deep State claimed Russian forces made additional advances west of the industrial district in the southern part of the settlement. Russian sources released a video showing Ukrainian positions east of the settlement along the railroad tracks under attack, revealing the position is under Ukrainian control. We expanded the grey area west of the industrial district and moved the line of conflict to the confirmed Ukrainian position east of the settlement. Southwest of Solodka, geolocated video showed that Russian forces had made a small advance. The line of conflict was adjusted. Russian subordinate attacks in the Staromlinivka AO eased over the weekend. 3 attacks in the southern part of Staromayorsk were repulsed, and Ukrainian forces have stabilized their new defensive lines. In the Orikhiv AO of the Zaporizhia Oblast, Russian forces only engaged in positional fighting in the remains of Robotyne. Ukrainian troops withdrew in the direction of Luhansk, crossing the Konka River. Another Russian assault in the direction of Mala-Tokmachka was repulsed. In the Kherson AO, Russian forces launched 5 attacks on Ukrainian positions in the Krynki area and the eastern part of Kozachye Lagery without success. After the most recent Ukrainian attacks on the Black Sea Fleet, Moscow repositioned 2 Project 22-800 Karakurt-class corvettes to the Caspian Sea. A Karakurt-class corvette is capable of launching up to 8-caliber cruise missiles, further degrading Russia's ability to use the Black Sea Fleet to strike Ukraine. One of the newest ships, the Cyclone, which was commissioned on July 12, 2023, was sunk at its berth on May 19, 2024, after being struck by an ATACMS missile. Russian sources claim that an armored column of 18 vehicles was destroyed in Sudzha, south of the city of Kursk in Russia. Sudzha is on the border with Ukraine with the H7 highway leading to Yunakivka. Multiple sources claimed that the lead and rear vehicles were destroyed on the R200 highway in Russia, and rocket attacks and drones destroyed the remainder of the column. There were no pictures or videos to confirm the attack and no statement from Ukrainian officials. There was a fire in Ukhta, Republic of Komi, at the Lukoil Ukhta Neftepererabotka refinery, followed by an explosion. 2 plant workers were killed in the blast, and firefighters were hosing down a fuel storage tank. The refinery is over 2,000 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, and the blast does not appear to be associated with a drone attack. In the Novosibirsk region of Russia, a 4,500 square meter warehouse for lubricants and fuel was on fire. There's no theater-wide update today because there weren't any significant events over the weekend. And that's what we know. Your support of my home, Ukraine, helps us make history and protect the future for all.
You've been listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War podcast. To help keep us independent, please consider providing financial support by becoming a patron. Want on-demand news in your hand? Download the Google News app and make Malcontent News one of your favorites to receive breaking news updates. Thank you for listening.